We are on air. Hi, everyone. Uh,
Hi.
I'm Scott.
Hi.
This is Bedini. We are in Meat Space in San Diego. And with us today is Amy Robinson. Say hi, Amy.
Hi. Hello from Cambridge, Massachusetts.
So we got East Coast and West Coast representing this
hmm
hangout right now.
And not
Yeah,
Hawaii anymore.
Not Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Coconut.
the close
No
east.
more Chaka, bro.
No.
No. So thank you for everyone. I see we have some viewers coming in for joining us. I know it's Father's Day, but every day is a day for science. And so who we have today is Amy Robinson. She's over in Cambridge. She works at MIT. And we're going to get into Amy's world and see what brought her to where she is today, what got her involved in science, and try to find ways that all of you can find ways of getting involved in science too. That's not just being in a lab and wearing a lab coat. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's many different ways, and there is a broad spectrum of getting in. So, Amy, who are you? Tell us who you are, please.
Who I am briefly. Well, am Amy Robinson. I
I know I didn't put you on the spot. We've talked about this. Come on. Who are you? 100 words or less. I know that's on your bio.
in 100 words or less. Okay. This was asked to me on a TED in the TED application. They said, "What are you passionate about in 100 words or less?" So if I have it like exactly 100 words, I might even remember it. So it's a good representation of who I am. And it's just basically things that I love, ideas I love. Oh my gosh. Curiosity, endless exploration, and perpetual discovery. History, etymology, literature, Seneca, Voltaire, Nietzsche. Scientific theory, travel, and the human mind. My greatest curiosity is consciousness and how it is that I exist. I am obsessed with systems and complexity. Interdisciplinarity fuels my revelry in reality's infinite variety. Um, Bilateral symmetry, philharmonic sound, fractals, posture, creativity, the wild. Adamantly, I focus and refocus my perception of the world and myself. In 100 words, I need but four to tell you my passion is life.
Nice.
That's who
Very
I
good. Dropping fat beats.
am.
You got Freestyle by Amy Robinson.
The first conference I ever spoke at was TED Active, and I said that on an auto-tune
Nice.
in
Oh,
real
wow.
time. I don't know where that
is
came
awesome.
from.
We need more auto-tune. We should auto-tune Hangouts. We should probably
Yeah,
do that.
right? I think auto-tune,
I think we
like
should.
every once in a while a commercial could be auto-tuned. It would catch your attention at least.
Well, real quick before we go any further, I want to let everybody know that you can leave comments, ask any questions on the event page, and please share this out, and so we can see, have it go out there on this Science Sunday. If you want to use Twitter, you can see our Twitter handles here. I am Ball Astronomer, and this is
Dr. Half Pint Buddy.
Dr. Half Pint Buddy.
Yeah.
And Amy, what are you on Twitter?
Oh yeah, Amy Lee Robinson on
Amy Lee
Twitter.
Robinson. You can use the hashtag KTC Hangout, and we will be following those. Also, any of the shares going out on Google Plus, we'll be able to check in the comments, and on YouTube. So all of you watching us on YouTube, please feel free to leave us a comment, ask any questions as we go into discovering what brought Amy to where she is today, because MIT is pretty awesome, and not many people get to say, yeah, I work at MIT. That's pretty awesome. Let's find out how you got here.
So, yeah, let's start with what brought you into TEDx. What is TEDx to begin with? And how
Okay.
did you start joining it? And what exactly do you do for them?
Okay, yeah. So TED is, technology, entertainment, design, and their premise, I guess, their purpose is to bring people together for ideas worth spreading. And TED got brave and decided to give their brand away to people so that they could create more places where ideas spread. And it's an independently organized TED event. And these were launched, I guess, back in 2009. And I had been a TED fan for a while, and at some point, I think it was late 2009, early 2010, I heard about a TEDx that was happening in a city in Nashville, Tennessee, which is like 2 hours away from where I lived, and I went to it and checked it out because it just sounded interesting. And when I got there, I was like, this is amazing, we have to do it in Huntsville. So I just decided one day that I was going to do a TEDx. And
You just decided I'm going to do something at TEDx?
Yeah, I just instantly, because you can basically get a license to do a TEDx, and they don't cost anything. And you can just put on a TEDx event in your city, in your neighborhood. Most cities already have them, so now I think it would be more getting involved with a TEDx that's in your place.
Right.
But back then they were new, and I was like, oh, we have to do one in Huntsville. This will be awesome. And it involves a lot of curation, which you guys know a lot about, being curators yourselves. Science. Yeah, I don't know. What I guess really changed it was, in order to have more than 100 people at your TEDx events, you have to go to TED. And yeah, at the time I was like 24, and TED's expensive, and it was in like 3 months, and it was in England. Never been to England. And one of my mentors now, Todd Martin, who runs TEDx Atlanta, I reached out to other TEDx organizers and was like, hey, will you be the licensee so we can have a big event and fly lots of people in to speak at TEDx Huntsville? And this guy, Todd Martin, came over and had lunch with us, and he was like, Amy, you have to go to TED. He's like, you have to spend every penny that you have to go because it will change your life. And he was right.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't had him pushing me, I wouldn't have gone, because I couldn't afford it. I overdrafted my bank account while I was in England.
Oh no.
But it was worth every penny that I didn't have.
Right.
Because that's where I met Sebastian Sung.
Okay.
And that's why I'm at MIT, building, a game to map the brain and helping with other projects.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess that's how TED got started and how it started to sort of snowball.
Just one day you're like, you know what? That was pretty awesome, and I'm going to do it myself. And you just went on. And I see that's a trend a lot with a lot of people I've been able to have the great opportunity of knowing via Google Plus and elsewhere, is that it's just a decision of, that's cool, but also I am going to do it. And, whatever the consequences are, no matter how hard it's going to be along the way, you just go for it. And that tends to, yeah, you're going to fail. You're going to crash and burn sometimes. That kind of goes along with it. But you learn so much along the way, and you get to experience such amazing things in the journey for that.
Yeah.
You're not just watching from the sidelines anymore. You're actually doing something you are passionate about, instead of just watching other people do something you're passionate about. And I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I like to just take action on ideas. There's a quote by Bolt, and I don't even know who Bolt is, but he has this great quote that just says, take action on your ideas. Action generates inspiration. And I think it does. So yeah, and I don't know.
So what was TED like? Because there's not many people that can say, I've been to a TED conference. So what was it like in England at TED?
Was it life-changing?
It was. It was life-changing. I guess before going, I thought that going to TED was going to be the presentations were going to be the best part. But the best part is the audience, is being for a week in this mixture of people who go to great effort and expense to put themselves in this environment that celebrates ideas. And you get a wide variety of people, ranging from like National Geographic explorers to international business leaders to global philanthropists, all these people coming together, and everyone is sort of, your brain's overloaded, right? So imagine if you just went on to TED and you spent like 8 hours watching talks. And then you took like hour-long breaks, but you had to go talk with other people who are like caliber giving TED Talks. So it's kind of intimidating, and it's kind of it's overwhelming, and the people who are there tend to be experts in their field, but it's very humbling because you can't know so much about everything. Right. And you see a lot of things that you never really thought of. So it kind of breaks down barriers, breaks down boundaries. And so you can talk with people who you just met like you've known them for a long time. And I think one of the most interesting interactions that's ever happened to me in my life was at TED Global. And it was this person who I didn't even know walked up and was like, he looked at my name badge and he was like, hey, Amy, so what inspires you? And I was like, what? A stranger just walked up and said that to me? But it made me start thinking.
What inspires you? I mean, how does...
Remember what I said.
What was your answer?
I I don't even know what my answer was. I was so surprised that someone I didn't know would walk up and say that. But it just made me realize that I can do that to people, and I can catalyze awesome conversations. And I can, by asking interesting questions and things like, what are you passionate about? What are you inspired by? It tells people from the start that you're interested in talking about things that matter, because any conversation can be one that changes the way you think for the rest of your life. Anyone can be one that generates ideas that play a major role in determining who you are and shaping the projects that you evolve. And I feel like if we can figure out ways to catalyze more of those conversations in our daily lives, it's good for us, and it's good for just the culture that we're immersed in anyway. So that's one of the takeaways that I got from TED anyway.
No, it's awesome, man. Finding different ways to connect to that and getting your inspiration. It's a hard question. What inspires you? I mean, we're so complicated, and there's so many things that are involved in our lives that don't necessarily, you wouldn't infer that, okay, I do astronomy, but I get so much more inspiration from things like, going to the beach, which has really nothing to do with astronomy when you think about it, but it gives you a chance to go out and breathe and relax, and gives you a chance to look up. And so when you find something that inspires you, it doesn't necessarily have to think, well, oh, that makes sense because you do neuroscience, so of course that that would inspire you. But since we're humans, we're all human beings, and we do so many different things. Having that inspiration that informs who we are as people is something that's really important, because science is what we do, and it's a part of our life, but we're still human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love it. It's very invigorating to discover new things, Like, I feel like I've discovered new subjects at TED that I didn't even know existed, like cymatics.
Okay.
What is that?
Yeah. It's visualizing sound. Basically, this dude from the 1700s named Shalidni made these metal plates, and he put sand on the top of them, and then he would string a violin bow on the side of it, and it would make like frequency vibrations in the plate. And sand on a plate forms these really crazy symmetrical patterns instantly. You should just Google it. It's CYMATICS on YouTube it or something. It's you'll see this and you'll be like, what is going on right now? Is this for real? It's a cool science experiment, but there's a lot of things that you can do by studying acoustics, and I think that's sort of like segued me into some tangent, but it was inspiring to me.
Right. So you mentioned that's where you met Sebastian Sung at TED, and you work with him right now at MIT. So how did that transition happen? That's quite a transition from I wanted to do a TED in Huntsville to I'm going broke at a TED event in England to now I'm working at MIT. That's quite a jump. How does that happen?
Wow, how does that happen? I guess it was, a period of 3 years from when I met Sebastian. So I've always been really passionate about the brain, and not really, I guess about the brain, but really about consciousness and understanding how the human mind works. Like, to me, it's one of the greatest unknowns, and I feel like we should know it. Like, we can figure not really how this works, but we need to know. Like, I want to understand how I'm a biological thing sitting here and like contemplating and talking with you guys. I want to understand how that works, and so I've always been really passionate about that, and so I spent a lot of my spare time just reading about neuroscience and writing to researchers. One of my life hacks, I guess, maybe it's not a life hack. Every time I read something interesting, I write to the author. So I just send a lot of emails that are like, hey, what do you think about this? Or I read your article and it made me wonder, blah, blah, blah. And I tend to read a lot of abstracts, so I reach out to a lot of professors. So I don't know, I guess I knew Sebastian, and I saw Carl Zimmer tweeted about Eyewire.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I discovered it via Twitter, actually. not even straight through Sebastian. But so I immediately wrote to Sebastian. I was like, I think what you're doing is amazing. You should maybe do this and this and this and this. And it turned into me coming to Cambridge. But really, I guess it's because of the systems I started implementing, because of being involved with TEDx, that I'm here even in the first place. Namely crowdsourcing. So
Okay.
so I look at the TEDx programs, right? They're independently organized TEDx events, and you get a license and you get a branding guidelines before organizing a TEDx event. And your rules are really, your talks must be 18 minutes or less. They must be of the TED style. And you have to follow branding guidelines. But after that, everything else is left up to you. And to me, that's I've thought about it a lot, because I am always having to answer, especially when I was running TEDx Huntsville, I was constantly having to answer, to explain what TED is, which is really hard if someone doesn't know what TED is.
Right.
But
it's a part of that Prometheus promo video.
Yeah.
Like, what's that mean? I've never seen this before. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
Stadiums with drones. Yeah. But it made me start thinking just a lot about why people why people like TED, and why as a random person do I decide all of a sudden that I want to go to such great lengths to organize a TEDx event.
Right.
And I think it's because it connects you to something, like it allows about. So for me, I'm really passionate about ideas, and I like to have great conversations. And a way to facilitate that is TED, organizing TEDx events. And I started looking at, there's all these other TEDx organizers around the world that are also designing these events. Why does that work? And I started to kind of design systems that were modeled after the TEDx format, such that give some kind of constraint, some kind of architecture. And then let people have infinite creative freedom within that, which is basically how you design a crowdsourced system.
Right.
So it's sort of like in a nutshell. But so I started designing things like that. So I worked briefly with this group, NIDE for Dev and the Niger Delta, doing like youth-led water quality management programs. And I started the TEDx Global Music Project, which is a crowdsourced library of the best live music from TEDx events all over the world. And it's all Creative Commons, which means you can download it and whatnot.
Right.
And I started.
Creative Commons is awesome.
Yeah, right. It is, and that's
open source.
Yeah, open source everything. And then I designed these crowdsourced population health programs, and coupled with organizing TEDx events. Also, when I connected with Sebastian, who was building a game to map the brain, he really needed someone to get people to play it.
Right.
And that's, in a way, crowdsourcing.
No,
so
absolutely.
When I connected with Sebastian, I was like, I just gave him ideas that I would do if I was helping him. And I told him that I would like to help him. I thought I would just be doing some like pro bono stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I guess a couple of things coming together. So TED inspiring me to create interesting projects that, again, I just started. I was like, okay, I'm going to design a population health program in Huntsville. And then you just start building it.
Yeah, you just do it, right.
And then before you know it, you've like built a huge thing.
Right.
So I think one thing it really highlights is the importance of having really good mentors. And it sounds like Sebastian is a very significant mentor for you. And you mentioned someone else earlier who encouraged you to go for the TED Global event. And can you say like how important that was and what people should look for in mentors? Because that's one common theme in all the Hangouts we've done. Every single person we've interviewed had said, I've had an amazing mentor, and that's why I am where I am.
Right.
And can you explain your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it is really important to have like mentors, people who you respect deeply, that will encourage you to take the right risks. It can be really hard to force yourself to do the risky things. And sometimes when you have a good, give you the confidence to make those decisions. They help you, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, it's terrifying. Creating something is, if you're creatively inclined, going through and actually creating something is both exhilarating and completely terrifying all at the same time. No
Yeah.
one wants to crash and burn. No one wants to go up in flames and fail. But it's in the process of doing that, you learn so much about yourself, about what you should be doing better next time because you did crash and burn and fail. And that's where a lot of the brilliant insights come from, is from failing. And getting over that fear of failing is something that I've also seen as well with some of the students I've worked with at the local school I'm at, to just the fact that they're so terrified of failure that they don't try. And well, when you don't try, nothing's going to happen at all.
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't even. I just don't even think about failure. You just think about what you want to make happen and just start working towards that.
Right. Because how do you define failure? That means you're setting a limit on there and what has to go wrong until you're a complete failure. Like things, you have to sidestep things here and there. You're gonna have hiccups. You're gonna have dirty code that you have to go through and fix it.
That's how you learn.
You're gonna have servers melt, which I saw that video of on YouTube, which was hilarious.
Oh, of Eyewire?
Yes.
Yeah. Our servers melted. They did.
That's a bit of a bug,
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a good bug, though. So what happened there?
Yeah.
Is I freaking love science crashed your servers.
They crashed our servers. So Eyewire is a game to map the brain. We have a community of 70,000 people from 130 countries who are helping us reconstruct neural networks and understand how information processing works in the brain. And we launched in December of 2012. So we've only been around for about 7 months.
Okay.
We launched, we trended on Reddit pretty hard, but we got posted onto IFLS on Facebook, and they crashed our servers, and like it was like almost instantly, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really amazing when you think about it. I mean,
that's such a great response. See, that's a great problem to have. It's a problem.
Yeah.
But
it's really it was very insightful to me, because I bugged Elise a lot, and I was like, hey, will you please post about our project? It's really cool. It's really important. Your readers will really like it. And I guess she was fine, like, oh my gosh, Amy, leave me alone. I'll post it. She's a fan of it now, especially because now the first neuron ever mapped by gamers is officially named the IFLS neuron. It's going to be in a paper.
Oh, nice.
A published paper. But that's another story. Yeah. But yeah, it was very insightful to me, because I thought that a Facebook page would just give you a bunch of likes, right? We might get more likes on Facebook, or people might like the actual post. But we got registrations and players of all time now came from IFLS back in December. And like a solid 20 to 25% of all of our registrations have come from IFLS when she posts, or when other people share the things that she's posted.
Right.
So it's tremendously interesting and curious to me to see the reach that a good social media community can have. I mean, she's made, because it was posted on IFLS, it made a significant impact in the community that we had on Eyewire. And it's really changed. That's why we did the Eyewire Games, which was a social media competition, really because of that. Yeah. So we melted.
It seems to be a common theme with you, with TEDx and now with Eyewire, and a lot of it has to do with social networking and getting people connected.
Yeah.
To do whatever it is, whatever your project is, it seems to have the infrastructure of people communicating with one another, sharing ideas, and looking to that. Is that something that you find challenging? Are there any? What are the biggest hurdles you've come across with help promoting Eyewire, but also with TEDx when you're trying to connect these people to have them inspire one another? What sort of challenges come along your way with that?
I don't know. I like connecting people and connecting with people. I guess I don't know what my biggest challenges are.
Gotcha question.
I know, right? I'm kind of inclined to say myself, because sometimes I want to reach out to someone, but it can be really intimidating to reach out to major researchers who know a lot more than I do, and I had to get over just okay, this is fine. I don't have any high level expertise in the same field as a lot of the people who I write to, but it doesn't matter. And it only matters if I make it matter, if I think it matters. So I don't know.
Is that something you feel you've had to battle a lot with? Because that's also another common theme I've come to discover, the whole imposter syndrome. You feel you're not good enough, everyone else around you knows more, why am I here? They're going to figure out I don't really belong here, and something like that. Is that something you've had to battle with as well?
Not really. No.
No, you're like, I'm pretty awesome.
Well, I haven't. I guess I surround myself with really good people, and I take great care to curate who I spend my time with. And I think one way to do that is to be really proactive and reach out to people who you want to spend more time with, who you want to like think with. But I think if I wasn't so selective, it probably would be a hurdle. I mean, and in another sense, like, I didn't graduate from college, so that probably, like, maybe I've trained myself to not think like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's really interesting too, because so many people I've worked with, they're like, I can't do science. I can't be involved in any major things. I don't have a college degree, especially in the United States anymore. Having a bachelor, or having at least an associate's, if not a bachelor's, is the same as having a high school diploma 30 years ago. You have to have a degree to do something more than work at McDonald's. Obviously, that's not true.
Yeah.
So that's really inspiring. But what other ways are people able to get involved in science besides just doing, like citizen science crowdsourcing stuff? But obviously, there are other roles in doing science than wearing a lab coat and being a lab. But
yeah.
What advice would you give to people that are a little terrified of even going back to school later in life
but that want to get involved with science?
Right.
Yeah.
Researchers, like whatever fields of science that you're interested in, go find researchers who do projects that strike you as cool and write them letters. Email them. They will almost always write you back. Right. Because think about it. How often do you get an email in your inbox, someone saying, "Hey, I loved what you did. It made me wonder this." I don't get those enough. I would love
right. And when you get them, they make your month.
Yeah, right?
Forget day or week, they make your month.
It's like a delightful surprise. So if you reach out to someone in that regard, they pretty much always write you back, and then they're like happy. So yeah, I guess just start reaching out, talk to researchers, and you may find roles that you didn't even know existed, or that are just newly evolving. Like now my expertise is in crowdsourcing, which I don't know.
5 years ago, no one knew what crowdsourcing was. That word didn't exist,
and it's still like rapidly evolving.
Yeah.
So what is your technical job at MIT then? You said you do crowdsourcing. So what do you do? What's your job there?
Right, so my job. So I'm technically the creative director of Eyewire. So I moved to Cambridge in October, and I have been doing a lot of the high-level strategy and design of Eyewire. I do the community managing, basically, getting lots of people to play. We've done a lot of outreach to different groups. We been doing a lot of speaking and sharing Eyewire. I run a lot of social media, which I don't know. I guess that's a part of my official sort of role. But it's like bringing our team together, figuring out who we should collaborate with, what those collaborations look like, how the game is going to evolve, and then sort of high-level, long-term brainstorming. Right now we're mapping the retina, and we're doing 3D reconstructing neural networks. How is this going to impact the field of neuroscience in 5 years or 20 years? And how do we because our sort of is to understand the mind, right? So how can we bring researchers together and really stimulate innovative thinking that's going to create exponential progress towards this goal? So I spend a lot of time thinking about that and talking to people about that.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a job.
And no. Right, doing outreach like that, you just brought up in that outreach, you're reaching out, believe it or not, to a bunch of different people and trying to get them engaged on something that they wouldn't know about yesterday, and finding a way to connect to this idea. So what do you think is the most important thing to you for doing science outreach? Not necessarily only with Eyewire, but in general. Like, what have you seen as a common theme or a trend as far as doing science outreach, and what its implications are? What is it able to do you think?
Science outreach, visuals. You gotta have visuals.
Mhm.
I really think that's huge. One thing, I mean, if you can get designers at your lab, or even if you could just always show an image when you're doing outreach to the general public, it's so helpful. And it makes people, they can sort of start to absorb what you're telling them. And that may seem just really simple, but that's what came to mind when I was thinking, I guess, what's the number one thing you can do to do better science communication, and that is to you, scientists. To the people who
we know you're watching.
Scientists, make a Facebook page for your lab, make a YouTube channel, and your videos don't have to be perfect. Just put them up. Show people what you're doing because they care.
And that's intimidating, as well. I've worked with a few scientists. I've done some outreach for different projects before, and a lot of the scientists, they're very passionate about their work, but they have no idea on how to relate that to the general public. And I think that's a great thing to bring up as well, that you have to have a very diverse team of personalities and skill sets and roles. The fact that you might be doing amazing science, but if no one understands it, how are people going to keep you funded if they don't understand what's going on?
And also the importance of science outreach, because I know quite a few scientists who think science is being in the lab, writing grants, getting money, doing experiments done. There's no time or money really allocated to science outreach unless the grant specifically says you have to allocate time and money for science outreach. And then they treat it like a chore, like, oh, I have to do this stupid outreach thing. And it's not stupid, it's important, because the money you get is usually federally funded. And how do you get that? Because people vote, and people need to know about that science, and that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like I've been thinking a lot recently about how to really make research move faster. And Med, actually, this guy was giving a presentation about they were delivering oxygen via like nanoparticles or something in the bloodstream, and they had animals that lived for 15 minutes without breathing because they had these little like nano things in them delivering oxygen, and they have no organ damage. But he was saying that the technology had been around for 20 years, and his lab had been working on it for longer than that. But they didn't know it. They just didn't know each other existed.
Right.
And I feel like there are so many cases like this that we don't even know about yet. Like even in ours for Eyewire, I don't know if there's some company out there that has created algorithms that can automatically reconstruct. They can automatically segment these neurons from microscopy data better than we do, or if they have some approach that could be really helpful to us.
Right.
I don't know if they exist. I think they might. They might not. But I don't even know how we would find them. And if we don't share what we're doing, we're basically a zero chance of finding them. But
Well, I think that also goes into not only outreach, but open access and being able to have access to journal articles that instead of having to be a subscriber, having to be a part of a university that has access to it. There's unless you pay out the nose, you're not going to be able to publish to an open access journal, which means that the general public is not going to be able to Google that subject matter and find your actual published research on it. Yeah. Which I think is a big hurdle for people to get through because it's expensive.
Open access fees, if you're trying to publish in an open access journal, I think they run into thousands of dollars. The scientist has to pay that money to allow the journal to give the rights, to take away the rights so that it can be published open. And that's on the scientist to do, and I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, because it's their work.
Yeah.
They should be able to do with it as they please.
But it's thousands of dollars you have to pay to make sure your work can be accessed by the public that paid for that work, which sounds stupid.
It's a little backwards, but
just say, hey, I read this abstract.
I'm sorry?
there's like a sort of a hack around that, which is I think one of the reasons that I got started writing to so many professors, because I would get access to their abstract, but then I couldn't read the whole paper.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would just send them an email and be like, hey, I liked your abstract. Would you send me a copy of your paper? And then after I started doing that, I realized that that was not enough, because some people wouldn't. But if I gave them some thought into why I like their abstract, then they would always answer and send me their paper, and they'll do this for anyone, I think. But I think that was one of the catalysts towards just constantly writing to people and reaching out to people who have some ideas that are interesting to me.
Oh. Well, yeah, it's, you know, writing people, because a lot of people, they get a lot of emails anyways, but being able to, I can't tell you how many times I was in school trying to write a paper and you only get to the abstract. Like, this sounds amazing. However, I have no idea how to get access to the full paper. And or unfortunately, your school does not have access to that journal, so it doesn't really matter. And what do you do from there? It's frustrating. And I think that's a big part of doing public outreach, is not only engaging with the public, which is extremely important, but also just making sure that if someone gets an idle curiosity at 4 a.m, where something just, because we all have those random thoughts, and you Google it, like, what does that mean? And you can find it, and you can actually read actual science that's being done, and having it open, that if you are so inclined, and not many people are, but I think it needs to be open to where you can.
Yeah, it should be out there. It would be awesome if you could send a request to a science writer to say, hey, I liked this abstract. Would you please like read this paper and then communicate it in a in a way that's easier to read than the whole paper.
Right. Well, I think that's the biggest part of doing science outreach, though, is it's synthesizing a technical journal paper and finding a way of processing, in a way of putting it into, getting it out of jargonese and putting it into the native language for the listener.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually been a big challenge for us in communication, because you know, our lab they're top experts. They're really good at what they do, and they've been doing it for a long time. And I think they forget how much the general public doesn't know about what we do, and they kind of jump in at a level that's sometimes can be a big hurdle. Yeah. Like there are times when I've been giving talks, especially when we're dealing with youth, and the kid will interrupt me and be like, what's a synapse? Or like, you know, like, okay, I need to step back. And so figuring out,
and remembering that most people don't know even very simple things. You know, an anecdote for that was I was always talking about JPL in my Hangouts about being there for Curiosity Landing, and many people in the space and science community know that JPL is NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and so it's very common. And I didn't think about it as jargon at all, because I use it all the time. And people I know use it all the time. Yeah. But that's not something that everybody uses all the time. And realizing that this is for everybody. And there are going to be times where you're using very common words for you, but it's not common for everyone. And taking a step back and trying to make sure everybody is able to understand what's going on, even if it's taking the 2 extra seconds to say Jet Propulsion Laboratory instead of JPL.
Yeah. And it's something I noticed when I try to write about papers on Google+. So I try to do, I've been quite busy the past few weeks, but one thing I really try to do is, instead of just going to news sites for science and resharing that, actually go to a paper, read the article, and, you know, it's amazing science. Why is it amazing? Kind of get rid of the jargon and explain it and write a post about that. And that's really, really hard, because I understand it, but I have to translate it in a way that people can follow. So leave out words that people wouldn't be able to follow. What's post-translational modification? It's words.
Will you tell me? No idea.
You sound smart when you say it, though.
It has a lot of syllables, and I love that. Please tell me more.
Next hangout.
Next hangout, forced translational modification. Something like that. Oh, science is wonderful. Oh, do you guys ever read Phys.org?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought it was like a collection of the greatest science writers ever, but it's really just a press release aggregator. Right. Apparently, yeah. That's a good alternative if you don't have access to journals.
Yeah, Phys.org is great.
I feel like I could read 24/7 and I wouldn't know all the cool science that's happening around the world.
Right. And I think it's something that we take for granted in the science outreach communities, that we know a lot of people from a lot of different fields. That if I see something about particle physics, I know who to ask. I know that I can say, hey, I saw this. Please tell me, is this bogus? What? Because
Yeah,
I'm not a particle physicist, but I know a particle physicist, so I can go and ask them what's
yeah,
going on. And really, hey, we got a bit of privilege going on to
yeah,
where we have access to these people, and access isn't really something that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And so providing that access
yeah,
and then taking that conversation I have with that particle physicist and like, all right, now I get it. Let's try, now that he's brought it down to my level, let's try to find a way that everybody's going to be able to understand the importance of what's going on here. When the Higgs boson was finally, it's sigma 4.9, no one knows what sigma 4.9 means. And so
Yeah.
going into something as common
What
in
is Sigma
research,
4.9?
what's that?
What is Sigma 4.9?
It had to deal with how sure they were that they detected it. So it's just the
Oh.
level of just that. No, they were very sure that this is what they discovered. But
Oh.
they kept talking about what their sigma levels were, and okay, that's great. But sigma is something like, are you a part of a frat? What's going on? What are you guys doing over there in Europe with your
Six
frat
Sigma.
parties and your big hadron collider and stuff? But it's something that's very easy to. So they have a live feed going on. They're talking about sigma all day long, and I know I would tune out if I had no idea what that meant, because you keep using the same word and not explaining what it means.
yeah,
That means nothing to me, and so I have to wait for somebody to deliver what that means and its importance. And I think there's many steps on getting there. What about you? Do you see between you working with Sebastian and working with the team there at MIT and Eyewire, are there different steps on taking a lot of that hard data and a lot of the hard statistics coming from the citizen science and making it into a way that everybody's able to understand it, no matter which level they're at as far as education or science literacy or anything like that?
Mhm. Yeah, we started putting a lot more effort into sharing data in a meaningful way.
Mm.
I guess because as people play Eyewire more and more, they want to know what they're actually doing, right? Like what am I actually contributing to? What are you doing with all this data that I'm helping you generate? So this, I guess we give them stats about gameplay. So I guess it's not really that technical. Um, we haven't figured out actually a good way to share the more technical nature of what we're doing, because it's very complex, um, extremely complex, such that
Okay.
our lab is still like figuring out the science of what we do. Um, you should like you should see our lab meetings, like when each of the members gives an hour-long presentation about what he or she has been working on. It's just like, whoa, what? So I haven't. That's actually one of I guess one of the things that I've been trying to figure out how to do better is
Right.
communicate the technical side of what we do.
And it's hard. It is not easy. Finding ways of taking pure data and delivering it in cohesive sentence in paragraphs that somebody else is able to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. When also like you start generating so much data that we're not a statistics lab and we're not utilizing most of our especially gameplay data because we just don't have time. We don't have someone whose full-time job it is to make sense of all this.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, we have hundreds of thousands of lines of chat in Eyewire that have never been analyzed or anything. There's there's so much data about the way that people interact that I think we can learn a lot from. So I guess like moving forward and thinking about just citizen science in general, I think if a lab is wanting to do a citizen science project, they should plan to get like an animator. Get someone who can help them run social statistics so
Mm-hmm.
they can understand more about what they're doing faster.
I think I remember seeing a TED talk on that about statistics that were, conveying information in a really easy to understand way.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but yeah, there you go.
I need to
First
find
TED
that one.
Yeah.
for statistics.
Yeah, stats.
Well, yeah, statistics is not my favorite subject in the
No,
world,
no.
but it's so important.
Yeah.
It's really important as far as conveying that, that information and what's meaningful and what's not, and in taking that abstract mass and giving meaning and context behind it. It's so hard because you have to pour through all those numbers anyways to find a connection, but then you have to relay the importance back from these numbers and values to this larger concept and still maintain the passion of your science along the way and why people should be excited about it. That's not an easy task. Taking something so obscure and making it friendly and approachable to 7 billion people.
Yeah,
That's the task.
Yeah. Oops. And then maybe I feel like it would be really interesting to help people discover cool science that's relative to their interests with minimal effort on their part. Like, I don't know how you really get in front of people who would be interested in what you're doing. How do you find those people? And
Right.
maybe that's why social networks have such really high impact, because they allow people to sort of coalesce around mutual interest,
Right.
and then you can share it out through that community, and people with a possible shared mutual interest can connect with you.
Well, and that's one thing I found just here on Google Plus.
Yeah. It's a interest-based social network as opposed to high school-based or
Right?
family-based or Farmville-based social
love Google
networking.
Plus.
A
Yeah.
network that shall not be named. So
Oh, yes.
But we love you still, Mr. Blue F. We still do. I love all the people that follow and subscribe me on there. But it's everything I do here now. All the outreach I've done is because of interest-based. I reached out and I did a quick Google search on Google Plus and got in touch with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that are involved in the shows I do are in the same boat, as they found people that have similar interests and shared that passion, and they found that link, that fire inside them, and what they want to do to collaborate and build more things. And so much has come out of it. So much has come out of it. And I think that's a big important thing as far as with Eyewire, different citizen science projects out there, is you need to pour some time into your social media and let people find you. You need to make something first for someone to find you, but then you need to yell and you need to get people's attention. And not in an obnoxious way. I do not want spam from you, but in a way that it's open and engaging and interactive, to where they feel like they're having a conversation with you instead of getting a news blurb in their email every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Having that conversation with people.
It does have impact. I mean, after all, the reason I know about Eyewire is because of Twitter.
Twitter, right.
Someone tweeted it.
Yeah.
So, when I finally met Carl Zimmer, I gave him a big hug. I was like, your tweet mattered, man.
Yeah, it's very true, and it's really easy to write off social media as, oh, you're just playing on the internet. And you're playing on the internet, Amy, got you a job at MIT eventually.
Yeah. Exactly.
So keep playing online, kids, and it'll get you places. But you got to do something, and don't just play Farmville.
Yeah, don't play. Yeah, if you're going to play games, at least play citizen science games.
Yeah.
People are spending billions of hours every week playing games.
Speaking of Eyewire, maybe we should tell our audience where they can find Eyewire, what exactly they can do, and we actually want to do a hangout at some point in the future exclusively about Eyewire, and maybe do a tour of your lab and something like that. But let's give people a sneak preview of exactly what Eyewire is. Because we've been talking about Eyewire the past hour, but what is Eyewire?
Yeah, Eyewire is a game to map the brain. So basically, we have image data of the retina, which is a part of the brain in the back of your eye, and it does information processing before sending a signal down your optic nerve into your brain. So we have this 3D volume of tissue, and we're trying to map neural networks that are associated with motion perception. And this is the first of a suite of neuroscience games from Sung Lab, basically, that are helping to help us understand how image processing works in the brain. But really, in the longer term goal, over time, we're going to be building better artificial intelligence so that labs all over the world can more rapidly analyze image data, which is a huge, huge bottleneck that most people don't even realize is a bottleneck.
Oh, yes. I deal with it in astronomy, too. There's lots of data and no one to go through it.
Right. So we can generate terabytes worth of data in a very short period of time, and image data about the brain. But in order to actually understand what you're seeing, you have to analyze it, and that's where a significant portion of time, resources, money really goes into doing this. And so we're trying to build ways that make it faster, and to make those tools, speaking of Creative Commons, tools that labs all over the world can use to analyze electron microscopy data, or really any time that you need to reconstruct a 3D object from image data. Not any time.
It's crazy. You have a game and it's going through data, and you're generating so much data of processing data.
Yeah.
So it's
how meta.
But that's interesting because you're building an infrastructure while you're going through data.
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating your own research project while you're going through research and going through and getting and processing and disseminating that stuff. You're also creating even more data in the process, and it's quite a good problem to have, I suppose. But I think that's a big problem with science anyways, crowdsourcing, is that there's so much data to go through and no one to go through it. Or no inexpensive way to go through it. Because you could, but you don't have the funding for that.
You see that with the big science projects? So, for example, this genome sequencing projects, you can sequence the genome really fast because there's lots of, it's called the next generation sequencing. You can get through a genome fast, but all you have is a run of ATCG. What does it actually mean to annotate the genome and say this part of ATCG is this gene and it does this because it makes this protein? That's the annotation. That takes time. So yeah, getting the data is easy. Analyzing it is the hard part. And that seems to be a common theme with all these big science projects. Yeah.
That's true. Well, this big science project can be found at eyewire.org. So.
And it's so much fun. I went there, gosh, the last time I was there was 3 days ago before I was driving, and I was on it for hours. I'm like, because it's so challenging, and I like getting to that 100% mark, and I can only get to 99. It's driving me nuts. I'm like, oh, where's that little part that I missed? But it's really fun. It really lets you visualize it because you're dealing with 3 dimensions, and you're using the slide going through the little cube to find that full part of that neuron.
Yeah.
Go to eyewire.org. It's a lot of fun. It's really easy to register.
I can show you. I'll show you guys the first neuron ever mapped by gamers, and then we'll save all the rest for the future Eyewire hangout.
Yes.
All right. Oh yeah, there's people online. They're chatting. I'll say hello.
Okay.
So this is the interface in Eyewire. Oh, you can see it sort of moving. So IFLS is the first neuron ever completed by gamers. It was originally, this is a J cell, so you can see it in 3D. I think this is actually one of the coolest parts about Eyewire, is that you can navigate these cells in 3D. You don't even have to play. You should just go check out the gallery.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a cell that has been reconstructed entirely by gamers. And we just finished our first data set a couple weeks ago, and we're rushing to publish now some really important findings about how motion perception works. I just tell them on a Google Hangout.
Tell them to smile. They're on TV.
You're on YouTube. Better than TV.
That's true. It is. You're on the internet, kids. Have fun. Do more science.
Okay. All right. I'll go back to me now. Okay.
But no, it's awesome. It's so visually appealing. Anyway, just being there, I'm like, holy, this is sweet, and I'm playing around with this neuron, and then going into great detail and mapping it. And it's all pretty colors. And doing the tutorial was pretty challenging in and of itself, and then all of a sudden you're let
Right?
loose on it.
You're thinking neurons. Oh yeah, it's easy to map neurons.
It's gonna be
No.
no, it's not.
No.
And I
There's
love
no-
that.
I always thought, before I guess really seeing them in 3D, I always thought that neurons had branches that were just like, I don't know, like that branch, like it's pretty
Right.
solid in shape, all like in diameter all the way along. Go in to map them in Eyewire, and they get really like thin, and they bulge back out, and they have like weird little things sticking off the bulges, and then they get thin again. You're like, did I do this right? Did I do it wrong?
Right.
Yeah, they have a really, really strange shape.
Yeah, and I'm not really all that into biology or neuroscience, but it was so like I was there for 4.5 hours because like
Oh,
I
nice.
need to do this. And if anyone is, especially if you like playing games and you're one of those what are they, completionists is what they call them, where you're trying to get every
obsessives.
Yeah, right.
if you're one of those that like to go
Eyewire
through,
is
make
really
sure you
good for
get
that.
everything to complete all the quests,
Yeah.
then this project is for you. 'Cause you will sit there and obsess to make sure you get it, and you're
Yeah.
doing amazing science in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our lab needs you. Really, we do depend on the work of the Eyewirers, so it's pretty cool.
Well, Amy, it's been an hour. We
Oh,
look
my
forward
God,
to
yeah.
next time when we're able to hang out with you at the lab and go over more of what's going on there. Is there anything that you would, have any parting words with people and getting involved in science and, creating new things? What would your parting words be for everybody?
You know, diligently pursue the things that you're passionate about. Connect with people through ideas that are meaningful. Make every conversation matter. Pay attention to what you're thinking, and pay attention to the things that you talk about, because those shape how you think and train you to think about similar things in the future.
Awesome.
That's all.
Yeah.
So where can people find more about you, Amy?
Oh, I'm on Twitter, Amy Lee Robinson. My blog is it's amyrobinson.me. Twitter's probably a good way, or Google Plus.
Go
I
Google
start-
Plus.
I use Google Plus a whole lot now, so I don't know. If you search for Amy Robinson, maybe I'm the first one that comes up. I don't know.
There you go.
That would
Yeah.
be a feat, I guess. But yeah, this has been really fun.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for
joining us.
doing this.
Thank you guys for having me, and I'm looking forward to the virtual lab tour with you guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll send you a text message when we're getting things ready for our next show for it.
All right, stellar.
Well, I am Scott. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And
Houdini.
Houdini, we're here in Meet Space, and it's awesome because,
Yeah.
this is our first show. We're together in real life, and we got to show off Amy and Eyewire. It was really fun. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
You guys are awesome.
On Father's Day, we kind of spaced it when we organized this, but
Didn't think that through.
yes, science happens every day, and
Yeah.
it is still Science Sunday, and we want to deliver that to you. So again, thank you for the comments. We will be posting a few things here later this week while we're in San Diego, and yeah, we will see you guys probably in I think a month, probably about a month. We'll have
Yeah.
another show, and we'll be out there with you doing another hangout.
Nice.
All right.
All right.
Well, I'm
Okay.
going to click end broadcast. Everyone have a great weekend.
Bye.